Last book of the summer reading program, The Art of Immersion by Frank Rose. There is a lengthy subtitle that I am not going to try and say because it's half covered up by a sticker. That subtitle is How the Digital Generation is Remaking Hollywood, Madison Avenue, and the Way We Tell Stories, and I am 100% into that. But, of course, if this was exactly the kind of book I wanted to read, it probably would not be on the summer reading program's list. So I was disappointed, but not quite surprised, to learn this is not exactly about narrative the way I am interested in it. It took me a while to figure out what, if anything, the book's purpose was, but I think it has to do with marketing, and I think that's why it was on the shelf. This is about how nonlinear storytelling and digital accessibility and multi-source stories can be used to create not just customer engagement, but viewer engagement, and the usefulness of that in marketing. It sounds skeezier than I mean it to when I say it like that. This person is genuinely interested in the phenomenon, but they aren't interested in, like, the specifics of storytelling in video games that I find fascinating. They don't drill down into the things I'm personally interested in. This is, however, a great resource if you want to, like, start understanding this nonsense. There's a great deal of attention paid to ARGs, alternate reality games. That's basically like a story told through a scavenger hunt on the internet that's pretending it's real. It talks about nonlinear storytelling mostly with the interest of engaging with what I think of as puzzle box storytelling, whereas in the viewing you are trying to assemble what the story is, and that creates an investment that can be either deeply frustrating or deeply satisfying. And ARGs do that too, except that you have to be in, like, exactly the right time and place in order to actually do it, and sometimes only one person gets to, and I find that absolutely fucking stupid. That's not how I do story. And it goes on from there. It talks a bit about the failures of advertising in a market where people can watch on their own time and are not necessarily slaves to the screen, and ideas of how that can be managed within narratives and multi-layer stuff. And, yeah, it's way more interesting than most of the business books I have read this year. It's a great introduction if you want to learn about some of this nonsense, but I would counsel you to be a little bit skeptical of the narrative that this book builds, because especially during the early stuff with ARGs and with movie game extended universe tie-ins, the book tends to hit big highlights and then treat them like they were firsts, which is not true. And it will occasionally back up a little bit and say, oh hey, but this is kind of like the way people engaged with the serial storytelling that Charles Dickens did way back, and, like, reveal that no, it's not technology only, but, like, a good representation of what this is they brought up Myst for its form of puzzle box storytelling, and Myst was a very popular, very successful game, but it was not, as the book described it, bringing a narrative to the table. What Myst was a first in, or at least an early adopter in, was FMV, and successful FMV video games in a puzzle game. It was certainly not the first adventure game. There were lots of, like, your King's Quests and your Sierras, which were King's Quests, and your Space Quests, and your Two Guys from Andromedas, and your text parsers, and your Zorks, and your choose-your-own-adventure books, those terrible books that never worked quite right, but are exactly what choose-your-own-adventure games are. And you can actually get adventure games that are literally choose-your-own-adventure books, like they're like little virtual books, and you turn pages and click hyperlinks. But that doesn't mean it wasn't useful to read and learn this stuff. And it's a lot of very recent things. It's a lot of Star Wars and Losts and Avatars. So if like the video game culture and ARGs, for example, something I know about but I'm not interested in, are new to you, then this is a great way to get into this piece of pop culture and understand some of the flow that goes on around it. Yeah, so I had a lot more fun reading this than I have any other book in here, even though I disagree with it on many points. I guess I do recommend it. It is a book about things, and it did research into things, and it's research into things I know just enough about to know where I could do further research if I wanted to.
So, I've learned a thing. I've learned that when I read a book that I actually like and it makes me think about a million different things that I actually want to talk about, I record a completely garbage review. I cut out so many digressions, so much repetition, so much everything from this video clip, and I never at any point got to the point of what I was trying to say. The idea that I was circling, but never managed to quite get to, not until the next day, not until I actually wrote a version of this review, is that this book is a study, and not a history. And that's not a flaw in the book. That's just a discrepancy in priorities between this particular reader and this particular author. And I think it's very important to acknowledge those when you run into them, because I have very strong feelings about what a review should be and what constitutes a review. Now let's see if there's any more video in this thing that I can salvage.
Alright, so it's been a while.
What? We going on a walk? Yeah? Very well. Pet-ins will happen. So this video took a little longer to get up than my other ones. And there are a couple reasons for that. The big one being that the last video I did was a hot mess and I had no way to resolve it. The other because this summer has been odd and quiet. For starters, it's been a bad year. Politically, everything has been terrifying. I've been on the half of the country that's been on fire. And while I haven't been anywhere near actual fire, we've had smoke roll in 2 or 3 times, and with my bad lungs, that's kind of terrifying. And quite frankly, it'd be terrifying even if I didn't have bad lungs. There's something about the orange-red sun and the constant haze that just chills. Or not even chills. It just weighs on you. I have actually cut out quite a lot of footage from all of my reviews that have just been me very, very sad about things going on, and for good reason. But damn, I want to have something positive going on in my life, and I want these videos to reflect that, so I'm trying to focus on the good, while simultaneously doing what I can in, like, actual senatorial phone calls and charitable donations to help with the bad. I don't want this to be Haley's sad diary hour. I'll see if we can keep this under an hour then.
I tried to cut together an ending. You've seen some of my attempted repair work already, but I really just didn't have any footage from which to actually create a usable end to that video. So moving on from that, I really do want this, especially the summer wrap-up video, to be about things that I've done to enrich my life and to keep things going. I have not been doing much to enrich my life and keep things going.
Yeah, so I've been house sitting and cat sitting, and trying to keep this little fireball happy. She's used to having 2 full-time cat parents, and I am no replacement, but I'm doing my best. And as a matter of coincidence, my sister and her husband are in Italy right now, so basically my feed is nothing but fantastic pictures of beautiful Europe. Meanwhile, it's like, finally fall here, finally the rainy season, and everything's getting cold, and I'm like, I'm sorry, Kat, I have to go to work, and also I'd kind of like to have some time to make meals and be in my own place. And she just does this. She's the cutest cute meow. I don't know if I've recorded it well enough here, but yeah. The cutie's cute meow, and also she's a vicious, murderous huntress killer, so yeah, a bit of a handful. So yeah, odd summer.
I've been trying to watch my budget and spend money very deliberately this year, and that meant no Penny Arcade Expo, no Comic-Con, and those aren't huge expenses, they're just events I usually go to for one day for the spectacle and spend a sizable portion of vacation money, and I just wanted to go without that this year, see what I can save up.
She has paid me well in 2 mice to be her companion in these dark times.
I did go on that 1 week-long vacation a little while back. It was an absolutely beautiful location. We went to a national park that was on fire 1 month later when the smoke descended again, so yeah, that is exactly what kind of years this has been. I've got to say, the plan of, like, not going out and doing fun, extravagant things like a day at a convention has not worked out well for me in a summer where I have been stressed to the nines.
Yeah? Oh god, she's gonna go for my shoelaces. Iris is very sad that I don't like wrestling. Cat wrestling involves teeth, by the way.
I have at this point spent all of my summer reading program money on a number of things. I bought fancy chocolate. I went to one of those places where you paint your own pottery, and I made this lovely little crudely painted pumpkin dish and filled it with grandma candy. I bought some shirts, including a nice polo I can wear to work. I bought fancy socks, because of course I bought fancy socks. I bought a whole bunch of other things, but the most important thing, the one that I really want to show you, is that I bought this. Whether you were aware of it or not, the reason I call this summer reading program is not because it's actually called summer reading program at my job, but because it reminds me of the Welcome to Night Vale summer reading program episode, one of the very first Welcome to Night Vale episodes I ever listened to. But I made some promises. I wanted to show you some things. This was my vacation book that I referenced a couple of times, The City Stained Red by Sam Sykes. It is a fantasy novel. It is Dungeons and Dragons-y only in that it contains a group of adventurers with the kind of same structural makeup as a Dungeons and Dragons group. 6 whole separate people: the healer, the fighter, the archer, the thief, the wizard, the dragon man. Dragon man. It's not my usual cup of tea in fantasy. This is way bloodier and a great deal more nihilistic. But I'm still recommending this, even though it's not my usual cup of tea, because it balances that darkness and that bloodiness by having the characters themselves be very lively and having the horrible, horrible mistakes they make be really, really relatably horrible. Like, you're never thinking, oh, I would do that too. You're thinking, yeah, that's exactly the stupid kind of decision this character would make. Several of them are kind of reluctant heroes, but not in the usual sort of rejecting the call way. This was something I really appreciated about these characters. They were caught between the feeling of responsibility over some of the disasters that were unfolding, the I could have done better, there must have been something I could have done to help people, this was all my fault, being really, really arrogant, and the fear that dismissing that feeling as arrogant is giving up responsibility for making the world better or trying to help. High stakes, bloody, great characters, fun writing, 2 more books in this series. Also, Sam Sykes, very funny on Twitter, plays a good elf in Dungeons and Dragons. This is the second fantasy series I've checked out because the author played a character on a Dungeons and Dragons livestream and was charming. The other was Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, by the way, which if you haven't already heard of that, then you're probably not in fantasy circles. It's very big. The other thing that I'm reading right now, in fact, is At Day's Close, Night and Times Past by A. Roger Ekirch, I think that's pronounced. It is actually a study of how people saw and understood and dealt with night before electric lighting. It's a scholarly work, it's dry, it's a bit dry. I may not finish this before I have to return it to the library, but it's very interesting. This is the kind of deep delve into everyday things that I think is very, very much worth reading. I have learned so many weird, interesting things. I've learned what rush lights are. That's something I never would have known otherwise. And I definitely recommend it if this kind of delve is what you are interested in the way I am. Further recommendations, I do not have a copy of this because it is digital. I am recommending to you the Flophouse Funnies. The Flophouse is a podcast that I listen to. It is a bad movie podcast where 3 friends watch a bad movie and talk about it, and they are some of the funniest people there are. And they have made a series of comic books for sale, pay what you like, on their own website, and the proceeds of those are going to charity. The first 3 are done in a kind of comedy, EC Comics, Crypt Keeper kind of style, and the proceeds of those go to the ACLU. They are doing a new series, of which one is out. It appears to be a superhero-style comic, and the proceeds of that are going to Puerto Rico. So, great causes. I have only read 2 of the 4 thus far. I intend to get the rest, but they have charmed the socks off of me, and Harry Knight in Wolfsburg is like right up my werewolf alley in terms of both its humor, its relation to Dungeons & Dragons, because I always liked Dungeons & Dragons. It's been Dungeons & Dragons summer for me here. City Stained Red, At Days Closed, Flophouse Funnies. That's a lot of recommendations for me to give to you now in vocal speech talking. I also made an attempt at some point to do a bunch of Dungeons & Dragons live stream and podcast recommendations. I would still like to recommend them, but I get incredibly long-winded, and that gets very hard to edit. Oh my god, there is so much to offer you. My best recommendation is to go to the Wizards of the Coast Dungeons & Dragons YouTube page. Look for the stream of Annihilation, which was a big promotional Twitch stream they did earlier in this year, where they invited a lot of groups to come and play their new setting. And just watch the games from that, pick and choose. Many of them are ongoing campaign groups. It's a great way to get introduced to various people's storytelling styles. And there's more of the same on their podcast feed. So, I mean, there are so many. They're so good. I love them so hard. I'm sure I've recommended these in some video or another, but Dice Camera Action, The Dungeon Rats, Acquisitions Incorporated The C-Team, Acquisitions Incorporated the original, which is scattered across various media, so it's a little harder to catch up on, and The Adventure Zone. They are all top tier, my best favorites I love so hard, so please, look for those names. And for all my rambling, for all that I tried to not actually make this video until I had some idea of what I wanted to say, I still have no idea how to end this. So, on the off chance you are one of my internet friends watching this out of curiosity, or one of my extended family watching it out of curiosity, or a bot that has achieved sentience, I would like to say, hang in there. I'm hanging in there too. As we charge headlong into fall, let's keep moving forward together. I'll see you next year. Oh, and the other reason this took a while, the batteries finally died. It took me like a week solid to actually purchase new batteries.